Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are. Obviously, as you all know, we're talking about HomeBuilder and that it's open for business, finally. Every state and territory now has all of their application forms available to be filled out and submitted. So this presentation is going to give you a high-level summary of what HomeBuilder is and how it works, particularly given that every state is administering the schemes themselves, so there are slight variations. So if we get straight into it, there we go. So this is what we're going to look at today. So first of all, what is HomeBuilder? What is eligible and ineligible work? We're going to look at the time frames and when and how extensions of time might be possible under the scheme, what the application and payment processes are, and then what other things you should know about the scheme and how it operates. So first of all, what is HomeBuilder? So you probably all already know, but just for absolute clarity, HomeBuilder is a tax-free $25,000 grant available to eligible owner-occupiers who build new homes or carry out substantial renovations. HomeBuilder is available for contracts signed between the 4th of June and 31st of December 2020 and includes sales contracts for new builders where building commenced after the 4th of June. Applications must be made before the 31st of December, even if not all of the supporting documentation is available. An existing home that has already been completed or started construction before the 4th of June will not qualify for the grant. And as I indicated at the outset, the grant is administered by state and territory revenue officers. So what is eligible work for the purposes of the HomeBuilder grant? So the building of a new home as a principal place of residence on new land where the value of the house and land does not exceed $750,000. So this will include, for example, the building of a new home on vacant land that was purchased before the 4th of June, where the total value of the land and the new home does not exceed that $750,000 value. It would also include the building of a new home on land that was bought after the 4th of June, again, where the total value of the house and the land is not more than $750,000. And then it would also include a house and land package where the home is yet to be constructed and the total value of the package does not exceed $750,000. Also eligible is the purchase of a yet to be commenced home off the plan that again doesn't exceed that contract value cap of $750,000. And this includes speculative homes where the contract is signed between the 4th of June and the 31st of December. It also includes substantial renovations of existing homes as a principal place of residence, where the contract value is between $150,000 and $750,000, and where the value of the existing property, which includes the house and land, does not exceed $1.5 million before the renovation. So if we just go through some examples of what would be considered eligible work. So in the first case, we have first home buyers Emma and Liam who decide to purchase a house and land package. Emma and Liam enter into a house and land contract for $550,000 on the 25th of September. So obviously the value of the package is below the $750,000 contract value threshold, and the contract was signed after the 4th of June. Emma and Liam's bank applies on the couple's behalf to the relevant state or territory revenue office to receive the HomeBuilder grant. The revenue office conducts all of the relevant eligibility checks and reviews the couple's documentation and confirms that they are eligible. Also to note is that as the couple are first home buyers, Emma and Liam may also be entitled to their state's first homeowner grant and any stamp duty concessions, as well as the Commonwealth's first home loan deposit scheme and first home super saver scheme. Another example of eligible work for the HomeBuilder grant includes these owner-occupiers, Carla and Andrew, who decide to build a new home on a vacant block of land that they already own. The value of the vacant block is $400,000, and the building contract that Carla and Andrew sign is for $300,000. This again is below the $750,000 contract value cap. Carla and Andrew enter into the building contract on the 4th of July and make the first progress payment when construction commences on the 2nd of August. Again, the contract has been signed after the 4th of June and commencement has occurred within 3 months of signing the contract. And that is particularly important, that 3-month time frame, and I'll deal with that particular issue in another few slides. I'll come back to that matter. Carla and Andrew then apply for the HomeBuilder grant via the relevant revenue office, which conducts the eligibility checks, checks all the documentation, confirms that Carla and Andrew are eligible, particularly that the contract was signed after the 4th of June but before 31 December, and that they have made their first progress payment. Then we have eligible work off the plan. So we have first home buyer Rebecca, who decides to purchase a home off the plan. Rebecca enters into a contract to purchase valued at $550,000 on the 6th of October. The contract was obviously signed after the 4th of June and is under the contract price cap of $750,000, so she also should be eligible for the grant. As I indicated earlier, renovation work and substantial renovations are also eligible for the HomeBuilder grant, subject to meeting a couple of criteria. So a substantial renovation includes the alteration of an existing dwelling that improves the accessibility or safety or livability of the home. Now, none of those terms are defined, so we take their ordinary meaning, and so most sort of significant renovations would be included, and I'll come to what work would not be included shortly. So the grant will apply for those sorts of substantial renovations of an existing home that's a principal place of residence, where the contract is between $150,000 and $750,000, and where the value of the existing property, including the house and the land, does not exceed $1.5 million before the renovation work is carried out. So again, just move through some examples to see how this would work in practice. So owner-occupier Cassidy decides to substantially renovate her home and enters into a contract for the works on 31 December 2020. The renovations are valued at $400,000. So this satisfies the requirement that the value of the renovation must be between $150,000 and $750,000. The value of the home before the renovation, including the value of the house and the land, is $900,000. This also satisfies the requirement that the value of the house and land prior to the renovation must be less than $1.5 million. Cassidy pays the builder $10,000 to commence renovation on her home on the 2nd of February 2021. So the works are planned to commence within 3 months of signing the building contract, which again, as I said before, is very important. A substantial renovation will also include a knockdown rebuild. So here we have an example of owner-occupiers Jackie and Henry, who decide to knock down and rebuild their existing home. Jackie and Henry enter into a building contract on the 24th of August, with the knockdown and rebuild contract valued at $400,000. This falls within the required value of a renovation contract of between $150,000 and $750,000. The value of the property before construction work, including the current value of the house and the land, is $800,000, which falls under the $1.5 million pre-renovation value cap. The couple pay the builder $15,000 to commence the work on the 14th of September, which is within 3 months of signing the building contract. As I indicated, there is some work that is ineligible for the grant, so that will include an existing home, as I indicated at the outset, that has already been completed or started construction before the 4th of June. Other structures such as standalone granny flats, tennis courts, swimming pools, and structures that are not connected to the property. So for example, outdoor spas and saunas, sheds, and standalone garages are ineligible. Also to note is that substantial renovations are not expected to include renovations that are primarily cosmetic in purpose, such as landscaping. So the renovation must substantially alter the existing dwelling. And finally, work carried out by owner builders and work for investment purposes or carried out on investment properties are ineligible also. Now, the timeframes around the eligibility for the grant, as I've indicated, are very important. So to be eligible, construction must commence within 3 months of the date of the contract. So what is commencement? In all states and territories, commencement is defined, and it's broadly defined as for new builds and off-the-plan purchases when excavation and site preparation works begin, and substantial renovations will commence when the works under the renovation contract start. It is important to check your local wording around commencement, just to be absolutely comfortable and confident that you understand how it operates in your jurisdiction. So what about if there's a delay? There is a possibility of an extension of time of an additional 3 months if the delays are unforeseen and outside the control of the parties to the contract. So some examples of unforeseen delays that would be outside the parties' control might include delays in obtaining council approvals or delays in financial approvals, difficulties in obtaining construction materials and or subcontractors, inclement weather where the disruption is substantial, health problems relating to or the death of a person critical to the commencement of the project, prolonged industrial disputes, or a natural disaster. But be careful, because there is no guarantee that an extension of time will be granted, and in most jurisdictions you need to apply for an extension of time. So examples of when an extension of time may not be granted include where the delay results from the builder contracting to undertake more work than could reasonably be expected to be completed in the relevant time frame, or where an applicant does not undertake appropriate due diligence when entering a contract, or makes deliberate informed choices that would make them ineligible, or where construction is delayed because a land developer has set pre-development sales targets that have not been met. So those examples are listed in respect of some states' requirements. Not all of them expressly list those examples, but it's fair to say that that's a pretty good indication of when an extension of time would not be granted. So be careful. You're unlikely to get an extension of time for example, any shutdown over the Christmas or New Year period, as this would not be considered as an unforeseen event or something outside of your control. Now, please note that in light of the introduction of Stage 4 restrictions in metropolitan Melbourne and Stage 3 restrictions in regional Victoria, a blanket extension of time of 3 months to the construction commencement requirement has been provided. So this means that all applicants for the HomeBuilder grant in Victoria only have 6 months. from signing the contract to commencing construction. So moving on to how to make an application. So applications must be received by the 31st of December and can be made as soon as you and your client have entered into an eligible contract. Then you can provide the relevant supporting documents at a later point in time. Now, I do just have to highlight for anyone that is operating in WA, there is some confusion around when you can make an application for the HomeBuilder grant. So this is separate from the WA state-based grant. And we're trying to get some clarification on this, as there's some inconsistencies in the application form and other guidance materials, which indicates that applications can be made once the parties have entered into an eligible contract, but also states that your client can only make an application when foundations have been laid and after the first progress payment has been paid. So be mindful of that if you are in WA, and we are trying to get the information clarified. Now, something that has received some media attention lately is this notion of conditional eligibility. I guess what this means is that on putting in an application form and a signed building contract, for example, that the relevant state revenue office will provide some sort of conditional eligibility, which means that subject to other criteria being met, the applicant is entitled to the grant. This has not been adopted in all jurisdictions. So at the moment, we are aware that Queensland, Tasmania and South Australia will provide this sort of conditional eligibility, and that the Northern Territory may follow. This means that in some instances, the grant may be used towards the applicant's deposit where finance is involved. However, that will also depend on the bank and any policies and procedures that that particular bank has in relation to how they factor in the grant. And as I said, payment will ultimately be subject to ensuring that all of the relevant criteria are met. So moving on to when the grant will actually be paid. So this will depend on whether the application relates to a new build, a substantial renovation, or an off the plan or a new home purchase. So for new builds, grants will be paid after foundations have been laid and the first progress payment has been made. This is slightly different in South Australia and the Northern Territory, where the grant will be paid after construction has commenced. And also in Tasmania, there is a discretion for the grant to be paid prior to the completion of the transaction. Therefore, for building contracts and the purchase of a new home, funds may be paid directly into your client's mortgage account at the time of the first drawdown on the loan or at settlement. Then for off the plan or new home purchases, grants will be paid after the applicant's name is registered on the title, which generally must occur no later than the 31st of October 2022. And then finally, for substantial renovations, the grant will be paid after construction has commenced and at least $150,000 of the contract price has been paid in relation to the renovation. So what else should you be aware of? So first of all, can the grant be paid into your client's mortgage account? Unfortunately, I think the answer is yes and no to that one. For example, in Tasmania, they've made explicit changes, as I just indicated, that this can be possible in certain circumstances. We understand that Queensland has a discretion to do the same, while in other places it's not clear. So it's best for your client to check with their bank and their local revenue office as to how this would work for them. Also to be aware, to carry out eligible work, you must hold a valid license or registration at 4 June. You cannot cancel a pre-4 June contract and then re-sign one after that date to be eligible for the grant. As I've already indicated, Some states, so WA and Tasmania, have their own state-based grants that your clients may also be eligible for. And there are some differences in terms of the eligibility criteria, so make sure your client checks this before relying on them. Also, in negotiating the contract, you and your client must deal with each other at arm's length. This means the contract must be made by two parties freely and independently of each other, and without some special relationship such as being a relative. The terms of the contract should be commercially reasonable, and the contract price should not be inflated or deflated compared to a fair market price. Also important to note is that if you are the builder, your client must apply for the grant. Your client also needs to satisfy other criteria around income caps and citizenship requirements. As the builder, you may also be asked to provide documentation to your client to satisfy requirements relating to the grant. For example, a copy of your builder's license or registration, evidence of commencement, which might include evidence of payments being made. So questions and what's next. So HIA has developed a series of fact sheets, which I'll take you to in a moment, on the Home Builder grant to assist. The process can be complex, so if you are a HIA member and you do need further assistance, you can contact the HIA Workplace Services team on the phone number on the screen or via that email address. And I'll just see if I can take you to the series of fact sheets that we developed. So bear with me. So here is the page on our website where we have links through to further detail on the operation of the Home Builder grant in each state and territory across the country. And there's also links within those to further information from government websites as well, which might be of use. That's all I really had to say, Kerry, and happy to take questions.
Thanks, Melissa. I'll just work through the questions that have been coming in as you've been speaking. So bear with me, they're coming in quite quickly. Daph has asked, what is considered proof on commencement if it's only doing earthworks?
I think it depends where you are. They might be asking for a stat deck in some places. In some places, the planning system might provide some sort of documentation notification regarding a certain stage of progress of work. So it's actually best to check with your local revenue office, or even having a look through the information we have on our website and then the relevant links.
Okay, Fu has asked, will delay in obtaining titles eligible make you eligible for an extension of time?
So I presume we're talking about some sort of off the plan or speculative build then. You have until, so as long as you put your application form in with your contract before the end of December, then you still need to commence within the 3 months. So yeah, I think that answers the question.
Okay, Maria's asked, what does a building contract need to include? For example, does it need to be painted by builder, or can the owner supply appliances, etc.?
Look, it's really more about the meeting the contract value caps. So if you negotiate as you would normally with a building contract, certain things to be done by the builder and certain things to be done by the homeowner in the normal course of things, the same circumstances can apply as long as there's no, I guess, attempt to use those negotiations to satisfy some of the contract value cap requirements.
Okay, Jess has asked, is electrical covered under the grant considering all other conditions are met?
Electrical, Well, it needs to either be, as I set out, sort of a substantial renovation, a sort of a knockdown rebuild, a new home build. So I'm not quite sure exactly what is meant by that question, but all of the criteria that I've outlined would need to be satisfied in order to be eligible for the grant.
Okay, are owners still able to receive the grant if they are self-financed?
Yes.
And Joe has asked, is the grant paid on occupancy if not financed through the bank, self-funded? I guess similar question. So.
Payment is in accordance with the criteria that I set out in the presentation. So depending on what sort of work it is. So for example, a substantial renovation, the grant's paid when obviously the renovations work has commenced and $150,000 worth of payments have been made.
Okay. David's asked, is an additional level extension eligible?
Again, if it's considered a substantial renovation, which I would probably think a second story addition, depending on how extensive it is, would probably fall into that category. Again, as long as the other contract value caps and things are satisfied.
Okay, John's asked, as a developer / builder, I've already started building homes after the 4th of the 6th, but not sold to any buyers yet. If I sell to a buyer now for this already started project, does this still comply for the builder to the buyer to receive the grant?
Yes. As long as the contract's signed before the 31st of December and the work's already commenced, so yes.
Okay. Are cost plus contracts eligible?
Again, the answer is yes, as long as it meets all of the other contract value criteria.
Okay, and could you just cover again, is it subject to the owner's income amount?
Yes, there are income caps on the homeowners, which if you give me a minute, I can. So in terms of the income caps for the homeowner, their income has to be below $125,000 per annum for an individual applicant or $200,000 per annum for a couple.
Okay, we actually got a few questions about that. So perhaps if you could just repeat that again, just those amounts.
Yep, so the income of the applicants have to fall below either $125,000 per annum for an individual, and that's based on their 1819 or 1920 taxable income. And then for a couple, their combined income has to be below $200,000 per annum, again based on their 1819 or 1920 taxable income.
Okay, and now we've got a few variations on this question. Can a builder building his own home to live in apply for this grant? Or as a builder, can I renovate my own home?
Look, I think that one brings up issues with the arm's length transactions. And I think my answer is that you probably should check with your local state revenue office. The issue sort of comes up obviously with whether or not a builder can do work for their employees. You know, there are concerns, particularly I suppose if you're a builder doing a job for yourself, that you know, that's not a commercially realistic transaction. It wouldn't necessarily be for fair market value. So there might be issues, like I said, with the prohibition or the requirement, I suppose I should say, to have dealings at arm's length. So before, you know, relying on the grant, I would be checking with the local revenue office on those ones.
Okay, yeah, because Emma had a question, I guess especially in regional areas where I guess you're a little bit more limited to who you can have. And if you're a builder, you're probably more likely to build your own place or have employees of yours build your place. So you would suggest to Emma to contact the local Office of State Revenue?
Yeah. The other piece of that puzzle that we don't have a lot of information about is that if they do permit a work of that nature being carried out and do allow it to be eligible for the grant, is there any evidence that needs to be provided to substantiate or justify that the arrangement is a commercially fair and reasonable one? So that's something that sort of we don't have information about at the moment.
Okay, does a single apartment within strata development renovation fall into the grant, or would it be eligible?
I think off the top of my head, the answer is yes, but the trouble with those might be complying with the timeframes. So commencing sort of a multi-rise apartment building within the 3 months of signing a contract might be difficult.
But if they're just working on a single apartment within that strata development and they can do it within that 3-month period, it should still fall within.
Yeah, I suppose if it's substantial renovation work within an apartment, I can't see off the top of my head a reason why you wouldn't be eligible, notwithstanding meeting all of the other criteria.
Okay, David's asked, are prefab buildings and tiny houses eligible?
Prefab, yes. I don't know what he means by tiny houses. If he means granny flats, then probably no. But if it's a new home, it just happens to be quite a small one, and meets all of the contract value caps, then I can't see why it wouldn't be eligible.
And I also had a question, I guess, around parts of a house that are, say, rented out. So the question was whether they can apply for the grant for the home that's owner occupied and a different contract for the part that's rented out.
Again, it probably is going to depend on the specific circumstances of that project. The hook is the principal place of residence. So if you are applying and carrying out the work on the principal place of residence, then you should be eligible. And probably without knowing the details, that's probably all I can really say.
So who would be the best person to check with on that sort of question for Alison?
You can go through and see if our information answers the question, depending on which state you're in. But again, the government information and the local revenue offices should be able to help. But as I said, it's about what the principal place of residence.
Okay, and does it have to be fully habitable? For example, if it's off the grid, is that going to be an issue?
Again, if it
it's a tricky one.
If it meets the criteria, the contract value caps, if it's a new build or substantial renovation, if you can commence within 3 months, I don't see why not. But again, without knowing the detail of what the actual build is, it's a little hard to say definitively.
Sure. Mick has asked, are you able to provide any clarification for on commencement for multi-unit dwellings, as they often will commence excavation for the whole lot, which would be similar to civil subdivision occurring before a house is able to be built? Would commencement site prep and earthworks or excavation specific to the multi-unit dwelling footings themselves? Sorry, it was a very long question. I guess just some clarification on commencement for a multi-unit dwelling.
Well, as I said in the presentation, generally it's excavation, but best to check with your local state revenue office because some have slight variations on the actual words.
And if somebody wanted to do, say, a pre-assessment to make sure that they can get the grant, is that something that is available? I
don't really know what that means, but all I can say is that it's up to the discretion of the Revenue Office based on the information that's submitted. So as I said, some jurisdictions are providing conditional eligibility based on an application form and a signed contract, but you do have to satisfy all of the criteria to actually be paid. And I don't know how much information the local Revenue Office will provide you over the phone if you want to call them up and ask them some questions about a specific project.
Yeah, so I guess people want clarification that, you know, they're going to be eligible for the grant before perhaps getting started. So I guess that will give an indication of how much money there is to spend.
Yep.
So,
yep.
Okay, let me just, sorry, there's a lot of questions coming through. Okay, sorry, I think we've answered a few of these. Okay, Angela's asked, are you aware of any ineligibility for a new build on a property with existing shared and domestic dwelling? The total value of both properties and shed, etc., on the land are all under 750,000, and the owner occupier is the property owner.
Oh, there's a lot of information in that one.
Do you want me to read that again?
Again, it's about the principal place of residence. It's about the contract value caps. So if the value of the new house is under that $750,000, including the value of the land, you know, it should be okay. But yeah, there was a lot of detail in that. So best just to check. You can check the fact sheets on our website and see whether it all fits in under the contract value caps.
Yeah, and we can send a link out to everyone to let them know where those fact sheets are as well on our website. So definitely have a look through those, and they're specific for each state and territory as well, because things may be different for each state and territory, so it's always best to double check. Just to make sure, if a contract is signed on the 31st of the 12th this year, construction can start within the next 6 months until June. Is that correct?
So you need to make the application by the 30th. So you can make an application, which can just include the application form and the signed contract in most places on the 31st of December. Then you will have 3 months to commence. You'll only have the 6 months by default in Victoria.
Okay, so I think we've already talked about being means tested. Is it based on financial year of 2019, 2020? And what happens if their income exceeds the 120K in 2020 and 2021?
All the information that I have is about the taxable income from 1819 to 1920. But again, the applicant, so your client, should check that before, you know, going down the path of thinking that they're eligible.
Okay. Would a request for an extension of time be granted if the finance takes 8 to 10 weeks and then planning starts 8 weeks after the contract signed? In South Australia, 3 to 4 month planning prior to commencement on site. Sorry, that looks like that question's dropped out. But I guess another question around delays in and what will constitute eligibility for an extension of time.
Yeah, I mean, the delay has to be unforeseen. So my sort of conservative view would be that if you knew that financial approval was going to take that long, then that wasn't an unforeseen delay. So just be a little bit careful with that.
Okay, Maria said, my understanding is that council won't approve unless a certificate of title has been issued, so works can't commence.
That's going to be a very state-based process, so I don't think I can actually answer that one, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I guess things change between councils too with how long they're taking.
Yeah.
Different councils have different timelines. Let me see. My land in Melbourne is titling in March, will I still be eligible if the title of the land is delayed, getting titles for the land is delayed?
Again, it's you need, I guess there's a lot of information there that I don't have to answer that question. So when was the contract signed? Have you commenced work within 3 months? You know, or the titling of the land, if I can sort of take a stab at it, is so you've got until, I think it's 2022 in most places, to actually get the land titled, and that's when you get paid. So you can still be eligible and know that you're going to get the grant even if the land's not going to be titled until October 2022. But check again the local revenue office, because some of the application forms will have that information in them.
Okay, and this may be a similar sort of answer. David's asked, due to the time it's taken finding a suitable builder, can we make the application for the grant without the builder's contract before the 31st of December and submit the builder's contract early next year?
I don't think so. In most places, you do actually need to have the eligible building contract with the application form.
Okay, so that's part of the documentation that would be required to actually make the application.
Yeah, so other supporting documentation that you could provide later would include things like proof of commencement within the 3 months, providing the proof of payment of $150,000 for a substantial renovation. So that's the additional supporting documentation that you can provide later on. But in the first instance, when you make the application, you do need to have that building contract or sales contract with it.
Okay, and has a question, and this relates to a substantial renovation. We don't know how long finance will take, and therefore should the client be paying a non-refundable deposit if the finance might not be forthcoming? My question was, is it acceptable to wait for the finance to be approved prior to commencement of planning?
That's a two-barreler, I think. So whether or not you take a non-refundable deposit is up to the business and the builder. Sorry, what was the second part of that?
So yeah, we don't know how long finance will take. Should we ask for a non-refundable deposit if the finance might not be forthcoming? My question is it acceptable to wait for finance to be approved prior to commencement of planning?
Again, that's a decision for you as the builder, and depending on what sort of contract you use, yeah, that's a bit trickier to answer without more information, and depends on sort of the decisions of the business more than anything else, really.
So if it's a question like that, they might be, and if they're a HIA member, they might be best to contact their local office?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, and I guess that's a good point too for other members on the line, that if there are questions here that, these have raised other questions, it's always good to check with the local HIA office, because they can answer these state-based and specific questions. So I think we are coming to the end of our questions. There are a few that have come through that might need to be answered offline. Some are quite detailed and some are quite specific to particular building projects. So if there's any other questions, please type them in now before we go. Melissa, was there anything you wanted to add? I guess anything that people should know before we wrap it up today, and perhaps just remind people how they get further information?
Yeah, there's probably nothing else to add, other than obviously what I've gone through today. The series of fact sheets on our website is a good place to start if you're trying to find some state and territory based information. As I said, they will have links to relevant government websites as well for further detail on some of the issues that we've talked about. Unfortunately, we don't have all of the information, so contacting the local revenue office is probably your first port of call in those instances.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you, Melissa, for your time today. Just a reminder that the webinar has been recorded, so I will let everybody know when the recording is available. I'll definitely be sending out also a link to the fact sheet so you'll know where to find those. And just a reminder, if you're a HIA member, always reach out to your local office if you're in doubt, or the local, I guess, state revenue in this instance, because each state has different rules and regulations, so it's always advisable to find out from your local state what you can and cannot do. Once again, we'd like to thank Bunnings Trade for their partnership today. This would not be possible without their help, and please keep a lookout for the upcoming webinar, which will take place in a couple of weeks. We'll send you out a link to register for that if you haven't done so already. It will fill up quickly. It's an interesting topic, and it's a great way to find out what is going to happen, well, we think may happen in 2021. So once again, everybody, thank you for your time. Thank you, Melissa, and please keep an eye out in your emails for any upcoming emails that will be coming through in the next day or so. Thanks again, everybody.